The base is dropped on a rainy Friday morning here in Atlanta, Georgia. Soccer Down here. Jason Longshore, John Nelson here with you this morning. It will be an abbreviated edition of SDH, probably roughly an hour. Real-life things that we've all had to kind of put off to the side a bit during Atlanta United's postseason run and other chaos have all caught up to us. Jarrett is not with us this morning. He'll be back on Monday. John has a doctor's appointment that he's headed to now, so he'll be out in just a little bit. And then I've got a number of things that I've put off for way too long. So, no breaks today. We're just going to run through, and we're going to talk about, one, the news and rumors around the league, and two, your favorite memories from Atlanta United's postseason run, specifically the postseason run. That's our hashtag Friday flashback. What was your favorite moment from that run? John, you want to kick it off?
Wow. The final train whistle. I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to the end.
Oh, jeez.
The final train whistle where everything is right with the world at the end of soccer season. And there's a championship, and just the 70,000 people with some of their closest friends from Portland and them getting to experience it. And full disclosure, I watched the replay last night on FS2, and I was the one who made the post to the SDH Twitter account about the one word that came to mind where the fans were concerned. And kudos to Fox for making sure that their parabolic mics and that their audio guys were paying attention, because it was thunderous. And to have the season culminate the way that it did, to see the players react the way they did, to see a guy like Michael Parkhurst react the way that he did, and all the quotes that have come across, I'm going to go with the final train whistle. And this is the first time that I can think of where I have actually purchased a white hat that I actually enjoy and will actually wear. I've never been a fan of white hats, never been a fan of painter's caps. This one I bought, this one I wear.
Not really a huge fan of white hats. Kind of a special occasion sort of deal. This would be a special occasion. Would definitely qualify. I'm going to go back. I've been thinking about this since I came up with the question and kind of bouncing around a bunch of different things. I'm going to honestly go back to the first game of the postseason run at Yankee Stadium, where
Agreed.
I think we, at that point, realized this was not a team to be messed with.
Nope.
And this was a team that could do some things that they had been questioned about. There was a lot of questions after that Toronto loss about what this team was going to do in the postseason, what they could do in tough situations, and that match at Yankee Stadium answered a lot of those. There were still more to come, but I go back to that one, and maybe the thing that impressed me the most was after the Miguel Almiron goal was called back, which was correct in hindsight. The team had maybe like a minute of a, oh man, reaction, and then you're just back at it, and you get the goal back pretty quickly. That was a statement, and that statement, I think, continued throughout the postseason. But I want to hear from all of you guys out there. Let us know what your favorite Atlanta United moment in the postseason was. We'll be getting into those throughout the show. Couple bits of news to discuss. Guillermo Barros Schelotto is now confirmed to be leaving Boca Juniors when his contract is up on December 31st. There was talk about another year being added to his contract. He met with the president of the club, decided not to, so he will be leaving at the end of the calendar year, freeing him up to potentially end up in a few different places. Lots of talk about, is he the right guy for Atlanta? Is he not the right guy for Atlanta? Taylor Twellman threw his 2 cents into it and talked about Schelotto's tactical background or lack thereof and speculated that maybe the Columbus Crew were a fit. Well, it sounds like Columbus has a manager in Caleb Porter. Remember, Caleb Porter was at courtside for the Lakers. I think it was Lakers and Heat, LeBron and D. Wade. Did Porter just string the Galaxy along to get some front row tickets? I don't know, but he did.
Would you want front row tickets to the Lake Show right now?
I mean, it's kind of cool, but now he's going to go to Columbus. I mean,
At least they weren't ice level for the LA Kings. That's all I can say.
I don't know. The whole thing's nuts. So, Paul Tenorio over at The Athletic reports that the Galaxy offered Caleb Porter the job, and he chose to go to Columbus instead. Now, the Galaxy have been linked with Greg Berhalter. He went to the national team. Caleb Porter, he went to Columbus. Guillermo Barros-Schelotto, who right now is your front runner in Atlanta. It's a rude awakening for where the Galaxy stand in Major League Soccer now, because 5 years ago, you would have never guessed that that would have happened. Never, ever guessed that those sorts of things would have happened. I don't know what direction the Galaxy go in. At this point, if you miss out on all three of those guys, I don't know what you're doing if you're the Galaxy. I think you might have to go with Dominic Kinnear and go in that direction going forward. And I think he'd take it because he's not really being linked to other jobs at the moment, but that's going to feel like a third or fourth choice.
But I have also read reports that the Galaxy are still paying the ghosts of coaches past.
Well, that has nothing to do with it, though. I mean, sure. They have money.
Didn't know how that might have affected the bottom line.
No. John. The LA Galaxy are not Georgia Tech or Auburn football. They're not paying that kind of money out. I don't think they're really concerned about that because they had to throw money at Caleb Porter. They had to potentially offer money to anybody they're talking about. So, no, this is not a college football. Need the boosters to kick in. Philip Anschutz does not need any boosters to kick in to pay coaches off.
And I also heard that years might be an issue as well.
Years for who or what?
Years for Porter for the length of his desired contract.
Oh, sure. I mean, that can obviously play into it, but none of that really matters in the past for the LA Galaxy because the LA Galaxy were the big Hollywood, big-time, mega super club, according to some.
Yes.
They were that thing, and you went. If you had the opportunity to go to the Galaxy, you went to the Galaxy, and you figured it out. Now, not so much. Not so much. Sure, Columbus is going to have to probably offer more years and probably a little more control to get Porter to come there. Okay, they found the right offer, and he's going there. It looks like so. I don't think it's about money. I mean, I don't think Columbus is going to offer twice as much as L.A. I don't think L.A.'s hamstrung by anything in terms of not being able to offer Porter as much money as they would like. I doubt any of that has to do with it. I mean,
but I think that Columbus, though, will give the power that Porter wants and more of the contract demands. I think that he'll get what he's looking for at Columbus.
He's going to get probably more guaranteed time, but it's not that the Galaxy couldn't offer that. That's what I'm saying. The Galaxy, Philip Anschutz is not hurting for money. He's not looking at it like I can't give him more money. If you want my honest opinion, I don't know if Caleb Porter should have that kind of power. Flat out. I don't know if many managers should have that kind of power. You want your player acquisition and your manager to be separate. This is not like other sports. You have one guy in MLS who has that type of power, Peter Vermes, and he's been in Kansas City for a long time and cultivated that power. And he's had success to go along with it, so you really can't fault him too much. But this does not happen most places. The manager will have input, obviously. But if Porter wants that kind of power and the Galaxy said, you know what, we're not going to give you that, I'm not necessarily going to fault the Galaxy for that. I'm talking more about the optics at this point of losing out on two people that you were interested in, one to the national team, another to Columbus.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, Save the Crew. This is Columbus versus the LA Galaxy that we're talking about. This is not something that the Galaxy should not be losing out on targets to Columbus in MLS 2.0 or even MLS 3.0, but they are.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it says a lot about where the Galaxy stand now more than
Agreed.
anything, and they're not that
Yes.
special anymore.
Yeah. And, I mean, think about MLS 3-5 years ago and where LAG was as a showcase, a showplace, and a product on the pitch, and where they are now. And yeah, it's, you sit there and you go, I mean, I get to quote Chris Myers, I guess that deserves a wow because of where the Galaxy were and how everyone seems to be passing them by for whatever reason. I mean, there are several, but I'm just saying whatever reason you want to put on the table. But for Columbus to get someone ahead of the Galaxy, that is a tremendous statement about where LAG were and where they are now.
And here's the flip side. If you are in Atlanta and you're an Atlanta United fan, it can be fleeting. And you have to constantly make the right decisions to stay on top. And this front office, I believe, is completely prepared to do that. Look at the Galaxy at the end of 2016 when Bruce Arena leaves to go to the national team. That's where it all started to fizzle out. I mean, you had a few issues before that, just with age of the squad, and you were going to have to start rebuilding, and you knew these things were coming. Robbie Keane couldn't play forever. These things were going to happen. Okay, so the end of 16, Arena leaves, Dave Sarachan leaves. You decide to go to Kurt Analfo, who had his failures in this league before, but had success with Los Dos, your USL team. And it appeared you decided to go young with Analfo and the guys that he had brought up. Then it all just fell apart in spectacular fashion. And then you turned to Siggy Schmid. And then you give him all the power, which felt like a panic move. And then you decide, wait a minute, he's not the guy either. So it all started when Arena left. He was that rock of stability for this team. And then he leaves, and you've made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And that's where it can go south really quickly. Now, they've also had to deal with LAFC moving in across town, and that's made it more difficult and probably put a bigger spotlight on it.
Yep.
But the Galaxy have a lot of work to do to get back to where they were when they had a managerial opening. The LA Galaxy used to be able to get whoever they wanted. It's not the case anymore.
And I would think that's, and now if you're a player and you're being courted by the LA Galaxy, I think it's an entirely different dynamic now where players are thinking twice about these kinds of things unless they're going for an absolute paycheck. And
a lot of players are going to go for a paycheck. That's going to happen.
Not in dispute. Yeah, not in dispute. But, it's just how much of a jumbled mess the Galaxy are. And when you mentioned, when you were going through everything and you mentioned Kurt Analfo and Los Dos, I just, things that don't translate to radio or the look on my face when you just kind of have that recall as to how everything just absolutely went through the basement and the foundation of the house and the house caved in on itself. I mean, that was an absolute mess of biblical proportions with Analfo and the Los Dos variant that was there for the Galaxy.
And I don't know why that was the case. There's a few different things that could have played into it, and it could have been all of the above, but you had a very talented group coming through with Los Dos, and you had no patience for them to come together. You'd also had a manager in Bruce Arena previously that didn't really value bringing young talent through. So you've had a generation of guys like Jose Villarreal, Ariel Lassiter, Bradford Jameson IV, Jossie Zardes broke through, but a lot of other guys didn't. And the reason that I'm somewhat willing to say that the Galaxy made the right decision is that not many of these guys have stuck anywhere else either.
Yeah.
So, what happened in that development run to lose this talent? Was it the Galaxy's fault for not cultivating it? Was it just that it wasn't quite as good as maybe we thought it was? Was it there was a bigger gap between USL and MLS at that time? All that's possible. There's also the possibility that Analfo just wasn't the right guy because he had failed in Kansas City, and Vermes took over for him and has been there ever since. He didn't make it through a season in DC, and then he went to USL with the Galaxy. So he didn't make it through a season with the Galaxy. I think Kurt Analfo is a very good assistant. I think he's probably a good USL or, like academy or youth national team type of guy. I think he gets young talent, but can he be the one at the top of that pyramid bringing that young talent through? Maybe not, and that's okay. But that decision from the Galaxy put them behind the eight ball again, and they haven't really recovered. And that's where LA is these days. A couple bits of league stuff to keep in mind. The Board of Governors meeting in New York City was yesterday. It wrapped late yesterday afternoon. They talked about potential expansion markets, the Austin-Columbus stuff. I'm sure they talked about playoff formats because that was one thing on the agenda. We don't have any news yet. And Ian Thomas of Sports Business Journal says no formal decisions were made regarding expansion. No immediate announcements are expected. He did tweet that regarding expanding beyond 28, the MLS board okayed a deeper analysis and review of the idea, which will be done by the league's expansion committee. That analysis will begin after January 1st, which is not a surprise. I mean, we've talked about this all season long. When you start to have this type of interest and you have that awkward Columbus situation, you're going to go past 28. And with everybody else going to 32, it wouldn't surprise me if you put a plan together to get there. I'm just curious, once you get there, you're talking probably about getting there around the time of the World Cup being in this country.
Right.
You're going to have a huge knock-on effect from the World Cup being here in terms of sponsorships, in terms of just business opportunities. Do you start to put the plan together to go to MLS 1 and 2 and 40 teams and beyond at that point? I think you do. I think you get to 32, and then that is your jump-off point to having those conversations, because you're going to be looking at a completely different soccer nation after the World Cup is here. The opportunities will be absurd as to how this thing can grow, and also just how the sports landscape is going to change between now and 2026.
And I know that MLS 1 and 2 are coming. At least that's my gut.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I just wonder about the egos of owners from 21 to 40, especially for those who have been established as MLS 1 franchises across the board, with the prospect of not putting a quality enough product on the field where you end up having to be MLS 2. And would those owners sign off on that concept, seeing that could be a possibility if they don't invest properly enough?
I don't know. I don't know if they're going to have an option to do that. I mean, that's where you get down to the overall will of the group to continue growing, and it is a completely different conversation than I think the conversation that some promotion or relegation people are trying to have about just open everything up and you can start a pub team and they can move their way all the way up. And no, that's not going to happen. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. You can tell me it does, and I will ask for an example, and you won't have one because it doesn't. Because that pub team would be bought out by somebody else because they're going to have the resources to take it to that level. And then it's going to be a different thing than it was when it started. That's how this works. That's how this works. I mean, it's just, you can say, yes, that can happen, and sure, it could somehow possibly happen, but it won't, because it's borderline impossible. This would be a way to protect it and make it work, but also give the owners backing of, yeah, you're still going to have profit sharing. You're still going to have revenue sharing. You're still going to have Soccer United marketing. You're still going to have these elements that You are part of Major League Soccer. You just have to have the product on the field to stay in the top flight of Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And that could be really interesting. I don't think it's crazy in that scenario. I think you still have a lot of time to get there, and you have to make the right moves along the way. This next round, if you go to 30, 30 is going to be your first step. Who you bring in is going to be key. The launch in Cincinnati, the launch in Nashville, the launch in Miami are going to be key. St. Louis looks like it's really putting together good things, good support. They'd be a great addition to the league. Then is it Detroit? Is it Sacramento? Is it San Diego? Is it Raleigh, who now the Carolina Hurricanes? Phoenix is possible, but the Carolina Hurricanes owner is talking about soccer in Raleigh. I'm not sure if he's talking about joining with Steve Malik or trying to do something on his own, or if he's just talking. All those things are possible. Tom Dundon expressed an interest in this effort, according to the Triangle Business Journal. So this is a hot property at the moment, and it's a time where MLS can really start to position itself as a true major American sporting business, which is kind of nuts when you look back at what 2004, when you had 10 teams in the league, to now, where you're looking at a thriving 73,000 in for a championship match and everything that's happening alongside. So it's come a long way, but there's still a lot of opportunity to continue to keep going a long way, and that's where MLS has to continue to keep looking.
Well, and for me, you look at MLS and what MLS could be and is becoming. Sports leagues and ventures having dips right now. NASCAR, for me, is the one that stands out.
Went off a cliff.
And the sponsor dollars seem to have leveled off. You're losing your 2017 champion as a group, as an ownership group, just because of financing. And it's taking roughly $25 to $30 million to run a NASCAR team these days. How many groups are going to be able to put that kind of financing together? Ratings are down. Your participation is down just from the overall number of, like, if you're watching a NASCAR event, you're not getting the 33. You're not getting the 42 that you used to have. You're getting maybe 39, maybe 36 in some events, depending on where the events are geographically. And MLS has the chance to pass a NASCAR. And if I had told you 5 years ago that was a possibility, what would you have told me?
It's kind of hard to compare because I think they're very different audiences, and NASCAR's always been kind of on the periphery for me when you're talking Major League Baseball and NFL and NBA, because it's so different. But you look at just the numbers that were attached to it 10 years ago and look at it now. Those are our sponsors. Those are businesses who are looking for other opportunities to do business. And they're choosing not to do NASCAR. Combine that with NASCAR's traditional foothold has been in the South, and combine that with Southern soccer blowing up at the moment, not just Atlanta.
Yeah.
It's an interesting flip in what could happen down the road as your Raleighs, your Charlottes start to talk about being big time here, and Nashville comes on, and others. So, I don't think soccer is exactly replacing NASCAR, but it can absolutely take advantage.
Yeah. Think about the markets where NASCAR has a foothold traditionally in the southeastern United States. Charlotte. We see what's happening in the Triangle and in North Carolina on multiple leagues and multiple levels. Talladega, what's going on in Birmingham right now. You look at South Carolina with what is, everybody looks at Darlington as a track that people are attracted to. You look at Atlanta with AMS, and you know what's going on with Atlanta United. Nashville with their short track availabilities, and you've got Nashville working there. Memphis is a foothold. So all of these cities that have some kind of touch with NASCAR, you're seeing a lot more involvement with soccer right now, and it is an interesting flip. I like the way that you phrased it. It is a turn of the page where folks are looking at soccer as opposed to motorsports.
Yeah, and I think it's going to start with the businesses. It's going to start with those sponsorships, those advertisers that are going to look at this and say, the young people who would be buying tickets to these events, either one, are choosing soccer now over NASCAR in greater and greater numbers. You combine that steady rise with a World Cup coming in 2026 where there's going to be a boom to it, and it sets up really nicely for not just MLS, but USL, but the NWSL, everything soccer related. There are a lot of opportunities, and the MLS USL partnership has been great, I think, for both sides. It's legitimized the USL. It's allowed MLS to have that player development partner, and just the partner just in general, just growing the game. I'd love to see how they can get the NWSL into that mix to solidify it. Because I think if they're all working in the same direction, and even if NWSL just becomes part of Soccer United marketing, if that's the first step to get into the mix to where they're all pushing in the same direction, it's going to benefit everyone, and it's going to make it easier for sponsors and businesses and advertisers and just everybody to get on board and support it and help it grow. That's what I'm hoping is next.
Is this where you want to continue to plug what we talked about yesterday?
What are we plugging from yesterday?
Hopefully in a show edition for year 2 that we're thinking about.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. We will be launching a women's soccer show next year. That's going to happen one way or another. Probably mid-January, because we want to cover the U.S. women's national team run to the World Cup. We want to cover that women's World Cup in a big way. We want to cover NWSL in a much bigger way. This is a big time these next 2 years for women's soccer in this country, with a World Cup and an Olympics back-to-back, and we want to cover that, and we will be. So stay tuned. It'll happen, and if you have any ideas about how you would like to see that covered, topics, things like that, tweet them at us at Soccer Down Here and let us know, and we will be getting on that once we turn into 2019.
Yes, we're down with that show idea.
Yes, we are. Wow.
Programming update, 1v1 coming up with Sean McDaniel from Chattanooga Red Wolves. We're going to have that today. That interview is going to happen, so we'll turn it the next couple of days and get the update from Chattanooga. And we've also reached out to our folks at the Triumph up in Greenville and with Darren Van Tassel down in Tormenta. So we'll be catching up with them, kind of getting everybody up to date on what's been going on with the individual franchises here in the footprint and getting everybody ready, because I think we're less than 100 days away from, I know USL 1, I think we're at 103 days or something like that before everything starts for them. And so everything, soccer season might be over, but silly season's here, and everything's going to happen very, very quickly. So remember last year, folks, we thought we didn't have anything to talk about, and then the boat show came to town.
Yeah, you got a boat show, you got a manager show, you got a Miggy show, you got maybe a pity show.
Party.
Maybe.
Yeah, pity party.
You got lots of stuff. So just stay tuned. It's going to be a hectic off season and a short one too, because training camp is not that far away. I want to say like 40 days, which is nuts. Cool. I think you have somewhere to be. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
All
yes,
right.
it's
you
my
go do your thing.
6-month physical, so I'm going to go do my thing. Mucha plata, y'all, and we'll catch up with you on Monday.
All right. Have fun.
All right. Yeah, always do. Bye.
Adios. All right. We'll be taking a quick break, getting reset. We have a special guest joining us for a quick call, and then we'll be talking about your favorite playoff moments on our Friday flashback. Hang out with us. We'll be right back.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. It's a Friday flashback edition, and somebody to help us have a Friday flashback is Associate Producer Emeritus Jay Riddle. What's up, Jay?
Good morning. Happy MLS Cup 5 straight Friday.
Yeah, that works. That works.
First Friday with a trophy. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I've seen the trophy continuing to make the rounds. I saw Tony Annan went in his Instagram with some pictures with it last night. So it's
Ryan Catanese and
I think those
Eric
were all,
and all those guys.
I think
those were all Sunday. Right?
Yeah, they took them Sunday. Those were all posted yesterday. I mean, it's a special accomplishment, and I don't know. Maybe it's just because we're in Atlanta as opposed to like being in Toronto or Seattle the last 2 years and Portland before that. It feels bigger, and it feels bigger to the group, and it feels bigger in the market. It just feels like a bigger deal, this MLS Cup win.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just because if you look back at photos, I think Seattle was posting sort of Throwback Thursday photos yesterday of their parade, and they were in a trolley instead of the double-decker bus, which was interesting, and sort of the crowds around it. And Toronto had a good-sized parade as well. It's more than that. It just seems like it's just the residual seems to be, like you said, it's bigger. Like we're in those cities, it felt like after the parade, the chatter stopped. It just was on to the next thing. I mean, everything I look at, everybody I talk to that I run into, it's always, man, can you believe that? Talking about like a major sporting event. I mean, that's really when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, I will always remember, and I talked to him with this before, but Andy Bunker on nights on 92.9, I was on with him for an hour Friday night before the final, and he was doing morning radio in Portland when the Timbers won the title. And the conversation on the morning show was, is this a big deal? Is this an important thing? And the answer was no. Like, that was what they got on their sports talk radio, and they really didn't talk about it that much that day. Compare that to broadcasting a parade from the back of a car, and that's what we did on Monday. It was nuts.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I went back and I watched the replay before, because Fox only holds replays on their website for a few days. I went back and I watched the entire hour and a half of the Fox Sports South broadcast, and we had a dedicated broadcast team of Kevin and Dan and Jillian talking for an hour and a half and covering the parade and the entire ceremony. And then like another 30 minutes after it was already over.
Yeah.
That's incredible, and to see soccer personalities, journalists, like Jason Davis and Paul Tenorio, George Karashi, talk about the fact that they either got goosebumps or that it brought them to a place they've never been before. And these people have been to 7 to 10 to 12 MLS Cup finals. That's pretty incredible. These crusty old cynical soccer journalists, right?
It's a different world. I mean, soccer in Atlanta is just a different world. And I hope, and it's something I've been stressing all week, is I hope that this is not an anomaly down the road. I hope that Atlanta is not as unique as it is down the road. Some of the reaction is just interesting, though. There is this fear of, I don't know, is it the fear of, is it too big? Which is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. I guess, when you have the culmination of everything over the last 2 years, and especially this last run in the playoffs, go so smoothly. I mean, just so move through the playoffs so strong without, as you said in your post, Matt. I mean, and even down to the MLS Cup playoff final, the MLS Cup final match is, you never really felt you had anything to fear. If you really go back and look at it, if you set aside the nerves about the curse and all these things and however you felt about that, I mean, deep down, can you say you really were that concerned or worried that it wouldn't happen? And now, I guess that creates a vacuum. I guess at the end of this, you sit there and go, well, what is next? And I guess that's when you start to pontificate and things can creep into people's minds. But I just don't see how anything about this we could look back and say, oh, well, that was the downfall, or that I just don't foresee 5 years going and say, like that's never going to happen again. I just don't feel that way.
Yeah, that's where the comparison, that people will try to make is you look at what happened with the North American Soccer League and the New York Cosmos, and Pelé came in 1975, and it was pretty steady growth in 75 and 76 because you were getting a lot more attention. And then in 77, the Cosmos moved into Giant Stadium and were big and were drawing 70,000 plus and won the Soccer Bowl in 1978 in front of 74,000 or so at Giant Stadium. And I don't think they thought at the time that was the beginning of the end, and it kind of was. You started to see things just completely slide then, and the league was out of business after 84. That's not happening here.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the case.
The president of their club was also not, the next day on CNBC and Yahoo Finance.
Right.
Being interviewed and talking about soccer,
Right.
So,
he might have been at Studio 54 the next day, but he wasn't on financial TV talking about it. It's it's a different time. I mean, and that's the thing is at that time the league had been around for 10 years and you had no foundation because teams weren't thinking about that. Teams weren't building something for the long haul. You've got now, I mean, even with teams that we want to see more investment from and more advancement from, you've got the New England Revolution building a $35 million training facility. You've got like multi-million-dollar training facilities going down with a lot of clubs around the league. You've got investment happening, for the long term, not to keep the doors open type of investment. We're planting roots and building a foundation type of investment. And that's a different world than we've had in soccer in this country ever.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, are we going to look back and if we win another MLS Cup in the next 5 or 10 years or whatever, is it going to feel the same? No, it's going to be different because this was the first one, and with this team that was, really together for this past couple of years. We already see we don't have Garza anymore. Those types of changes. Just that aspect of it will always be unique, and that's good. but that's different than saying, oh well, it's only going to be 68,000 people in there next time, or instead of 73, or we won't see the same type of exciting soccer. I think that's going to continue. I think as long as we have ownership and people that work for us that continue to push that message and are very clear and very strong in their philosophy. I just don't see how we lose this momentum. If anything, maybe we don't win trophies year after year, but the momentum in terms of the growth of soccer and starting to see things like, hey, did you see that signing of that homegrown kid to the academy that started off in the U11 or whatever, U12 soccer in the streets team at the West End pitch and Marta? That's the kind of stuff I look forward to seeing.
It's coming. That type of stuff's coming. It takes time, but now you've got a position where, look, when I worked in front offices in the Ruckus and worked kind of to the side of things with the Silverbacks, at the end of each season, it was, are we coming back? 1997, when I was in college, the only reason it came back is because I was crazy enough to work for, I want to say, $500 a month in the off season while I was going to school in Athens, to keep it going, because the owner didn't want to put any money into it. And I just didn't want to see it die at that point. So, I know Silverbacks front offices after the 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015 seasons, every one, it was, I don't know if we're coming back. And now you're not thinking about that type of stuff at all anywhere in this league. Even in your problem teams, Columbus was like that because of the ownership, not because of the business side. Like now it's, how are we going to grow? How are we going to take this opportunity to be bigger next year? When not that long ago, it was literally just, how do we keep the doors open for another year?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Atlanta tackles the new challenges that have tripped up a number of teams. I mean, maybe not so much Red Bulls last year, but Toronto definitely, with CCL and with trying to handle that type of schedule, especially if the schedule gets compressed with more midweek games due to a playoff change structure, and how does that impact? But those are things that, you're expected to face as a championship team, as a team that's, taking on these new challenges. So that's the kind of stuff I look forward to. The only real thing that I think is going to be truly different, like can't be replicated again next season, is the fact that the Gulch has been sold. And that's going to be very interesting to see how the tailgating culture is impacted. That's something that's basically that everything seems to revolve around, from the beginning, the very first Bobby Dodd, to uniting sort of, even though we're disparate groups, folding everybody in together and creating a sense of unity before going to the games. And I think that was influenced the reasons why we maybe aren't as antagonistic towards each other as some of the other supporters groups in the league that, have more than one, because we're neighbors in the tailgate area. And so that creates a different culture. That's probably the only thing I'm concerned about, because the Home Depot lot is small, and then the Gulch, or at least it feels that way. It has grass instead of the concrete, and how are the supporters groups going to be put in there? And then also, just because supporters groups are in there, there could be a lot of people that become sort of homeless from the Gulch. They're going to have to find new ways to tailgate in the yellow lot or whatever lot.
Right.
But that also means that they're going to be disparate and not near the supporters group's tailgate. So that's the only thing that really I could think of to maybe have a bit of concern about.
Yeah, that's a good point. That will require some game day changes for everybody who is used to what's worked so well this year. Pretty cool send-off for the Gulch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I loved the videos and stuff from both before and after the game. I'll be curious to see how that gets handled going into next year. it's a Friday flashback, and you had some things. You reached out and wanted to have some flashbacks with us. So what was on your mind coming into the morning, Jay?
Yeah. So for me, it's really looking back at just some of the nuances and the differences between last season and this season. And I really did feel like we as a supporters culture, along with the team, I feel like we bonded better this year. I feel like we set aside differences more easily this year. I felt like the supporters groups worked together much better this season. And I think that stuff makes a difference. I think, if you just look at the fact that, Julian Gressel will make, silly, nothing's going to stop us videos for me that I can put in, to those videos, or that, the way the players talk about and bring up the supporters at every breath that they get. I just don't see that other places. And, it's one of those things where sure, it's toe the line, that's something that's you're going to hear from every team. But this was different this year. And I think it's so important for us to remember if you want to talk about not losing something, what I don't want to lose that bond. I don't want to lose that passion and that belief. And it's something that Dan Gargan's speech sort of relit in me after the Toronto match, that when things are going to get down, we're going to have challenges next season. We're going to lose unexpected games. Those types of things will happen. I just hope that we respond and are as resilient, and even more so next season in those moments. And I think that's, looking back, that's what I liked about this season. And looking forward, I hope that we can continue to grow on that.
Yeah, that's something that, it takes time. And I totally understand why fans might have been afraid after the Red Bulls loss, afraid after the Toronto loss, worried, concerned.
Yeah, we've never beaten the Red Bulls.
Yeah, but just in just the sense that it was still really new, and a 2-year-old team isn't expected to be able to do those things, and you hadn't seen them in these situations. So I think everybody was really on edge. That's why, for me, the moment that I'll remember is just how they came out at Yankee Stadium and how much they came into this postseason with that edge to them that wasn't typical, and probably in a perfect world wouldn't be the way that they would choose to play, but it was what was needed, and it's what you had to have in those moments to get the job done and lift the trophy. I think the team grew up after that. And what I hope is that going forward, the sky is falling takes don't happen as much. I don't think they will next year, just because now you've seen this team do it. You will have new faces. You will have a different personality and different character to the group, because you're going to have a new manager. You're going to have some new key players. But I hope that people have a little more faith in it, and not blind faith, but just faith in that, they've been through this. They're going to be okay. Whereas coming into this postseason, it really was, we don't know if they're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And testament to the supporters and everybody who turned out in the playoffs. And after that Toronto match, could have easily shown up to the first playoff match against New York City, and been a little timid, maybe a little anxious, but the crowd never felt that way. It felt like they were behind the team, and whatever uneasy feelings we had, we kind of shoved those deep inside. We put on a brave face, and we really showed our support. And I think that helped lift the team. And I think you saw them talk about that with the TIFO against Red Bulls, this full stadium TIFO. So that stuff's really important. So I hope we hold on to that. And I think we will. I do have faith that we will. And I just really look forward to next season. We'll see if I can manage to financially make it to Costa Rica. There's already talk of group tickets being put together here in the coming next few weeks. So this is really exciting stuff. This is super. And I'm just glad that I stopped on occasion at different moments throughout the day on match day and soaked in, because that does make a difference. I don't have a memory that really has a strong recall, to moments and things like that. So I had to really consciously think about the day and really soak those moments in, and I'm glad I did. And probably more so than usual, and probably a little less behind the camera or camera phone purposely. And I'm glad I did that, especially during the tailgate and things like that. So I just want to thank you, Jason, and Jared, and John, and for everything you do, and Mike Conti, and just beautiful commentating at the end of the final whistle. I know you don't remember a thing, but I'm glad I was able to put together that sort of as a standalone thing for you, and because I think it's special, and we'll look back at that as a very special, call, because it's ours instead of, it's great. The TV calls and commentators are very talented, but it's different when you have a homegrown, a couple homegrowns doing it. So,
yeah, that's the beauty of local radio, and that's why I think local radio will always have a place for these types of things, because it is personal. I mean, when we have our conversations on Twitter during games, after games, you feel like you're talking to people you know. So when Mike and I are calling the game, we feel like we're not calling the game to random people. We feel like we're talking to you guys who we see at Stoppage Time Live or see on Twitter. It feels personal, and to be able to do that is just it's amazing. And yeah, I think I blacked out after the final, after Mike's call, and I did not remember anything of what I said. So seeing it like that and throwing that video up there, man, I really appreciate it. I have not listened to the full-time report. I don't think I'm ready for that yet. I will sometime in the off season, and listen to the whole thing and go back to it. But it's not just us, and that was a big part of why on the full-time report, and one of the only things that we, or at least I and my side of it, planned in any way. The idea, we knew coming in, we wanted to do the pregame show with a lot of national stuff. We wanted to have Portland's broadcasters on, and they were awesome. Jake Zivin and Ross Smith are two of the best. And then we had our national roundtable, but the idea was, if things went the way we wanted, that we would have a lot of local voices on the post game. And we were able to have, J. Sam Jones and John and Jarrett and Jimmy and Felipe Cardenas and Doug Robertson all hanging out with us to kind of soak it in. And that was cool. That was something that I was really proud of, because, Mike and I are blessed to be able to do what we do. We're really lucky to get the opportunity to do it. And, while we have a microphone in front of us, like, we can't do what we do without what you do, Jay, without what you and Kelly do with Unrelegated, without what, the Siempre United guys do, Home Before Dark, The Athletic, AJC, all of it, like Dirty South Soccer, all the way across the board. None of it works without it. And Tofka TLC, I think, kind of nails it. He's talking about soccer down here and says, y'all's work and the other podcasts play a huge part in why the fans are the way we are. Unlike any sport in any other U.S. city that I've ever heard about, Atlanta United is a 24/7 consciousness. He's engaged nonstop all the time. That's why it's grown the way that it has. You can engage on any level you want to, and that's what's special about it. If you're traditional mainstream, you have ways to listen and read and be there. If you want to go deeper and subscribe to things or find blogs, you can do that. If you want to go like very deep into podcasts, you can do that. You've got so many different ways to be part of this. And I don't think other MLS fan bases have that. It's really lucky what we have here.
It's extremely robust, and yeah, everything you said is absolutely true. And I'm gonna leave you with this, because it sums up what you said at the end of that final radio call, which is Atlanta es familia, man.
It is. Yeah, it really is. I think I knew that. I think I've always understood that. I've always known Atlanta special and different. I mean, this is, my hometown, and I've always tried to quantify it to people. But what Atlanta United's done, and specifically like this run, I think nailed it. And it's funny that it took Joseph, who's been here for 2 years, for all of us to understand it. It took his article in the Players Tribune for us to really, truly get it. But he nailed it. He nailed it better than any of the rest of us could have.
Absolutely.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for spending some time with SDH this morning.
All right. Look forward to another Trophy Friday next season.
Ooh, yeah, that's going to be fun. A lot of trophies to win.
One of the 5.
Yeah, a lot of trophies out there, a lot of challenges. It's going to be a absolute crazy ride in 2019. Thanks, man. I'm sure we'll be talking before then.
Take care.
See you, buddy. All right. Let's get into the Friday flashbacks that you guys have shared with us on the Twitters this morning. Let me go all the way back to the beginning now that I'm flying solo and hanging out with you guys on the Twitters. We have to hit Joe Bost. Joe became one of our regular listeners and contributors about midway through the season, I think. And his Twitter thread is very, very important here. Let me start from the beginning. Good morning, guys. From yesterday, 2 years ago, my soccer knowledge was based on college intramurals and rec soccer with my little man. And then Atlanta United began. I didn't know what an 8 or a 10 was, a 3-5-2, 4-4-1-1, etc. I drive a lot for work, and I listen to 92.9 The Game. Rick and John and Dukes and Bell were kind of like me, football guys. Then I started hearing Longshoe, took up Twitter just because of soccer, hearing Longshoe's passion, then starting to watch matches, hearing Mike Conti's shots score. I'm not going to try to do that. I can't. That's Mike's thing. I can't try to imitate that one. Soccer down here, then listening to you guys answering my questions, other fans as well. No soccer snobbery, just being inclusive for the love of the sport. Hearing Darren Eales be just like a regular guy you want to have a beer with. Then, of course, the guys on the pitch. An exciting style that sucks you in. Seeing the 17s at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, cheering, screaming. I hope someday to experience it in person. 92.9 The Game, Longshoe, Mike Conti, all the fans are why I will be an Atlanta United fan for life. And a special thanks to Jay Riddle for the video. Still sends chills through me. So, that's what this is. Like, Joe hasn't been to a game. He's just as big a part of this as you guys who are at every game and tailgate for every game and all of it. So that's Atlanta United. That's this fan base. That's soccer in the South. It's just taken on a whole new thing. And that was why I was pushing back so hard on the Timbers Army blog post, because to me, that was what soccer was. What's happening here is what soccer in the United States can be and is for all of us. And this is not just Atlanta United. I think Atlanta United's a huge part of it, but this is also fans of Atlanta United who are also fans of the Greenville Triumph, who had a big viewing party for this match, and people were in support of both. There is that coming together thing that we have down here that happens. I know Charleston Battery fans who are Atlanta United fans. Open Cup games could be a little interesting for them, but it does happen. I think you will see the same. There are Chattanooga FC fans, and there will be Chattanooga Red Wolves fans that are Atlanta United fans. It's okay. There are people who are Atlanta United fans who have found out about South Georgia Tormenta and buy the scarf and buy the shirt and wear it with pride and support, their smaller level team. That happens too. Gwen's a big Tormenta fan, if you couldn't tell. Let's get into the Twitter timeline, because I could go on and on all day, and I don't want to keep driving that point home, although I'm sure I will over the postseason, because it's really important, and I hope that people understand it nationally as much as you guys who listen and understand it because you experience it. American soccer is going through a big change, and I hope to see more of what we're experiencing than the exclusive, elitist, separate soccer world that I had experienced for a number of years, and I think what a lot of other fan bases around MLS experience. Nathan Pugh with his Friday flashback. The Escobar goal in the final, although I think he might want to change it to the guy puking in the row behind them 5 minutes into the final. I don't know how many people were that guy at the final. It was a long tailgate. I hope people were able to pace themselves. I hope that guy was able to rally. I really do. I hope that didn't ruin his night. For me, that would have ruined the night. I'd have been overdone, cashed out. But hopefully that guy was able to puke and rally and keep going, and hopefully didn't make a mess for anybody else. But the Escobar goal in the final, that was Nathan Pugh's Friday flashback. Man, Escobar was massive in the postseason. He's such a big performance from him. I love his passion. I loved watching his development from day one to that final. I mean, he looked like a completely different player as he grew up throughout the year. Ben Grabowski, favorite playoff moment besides the obvious of Saturday night was either the Tata Tifo or the 3-0 thrashing of the Red Bulls. Tito's third goal and his release of emotion gets me every time. That third goal from Tito gets better and better every time I see it. You know, where our angle watching it live, it looked like a really good goal. I didn't appreciate how good it was until it might have actually been the Nothing's Gonna Stop Us video that had the behind the goal shot of it, where I really saw, like, man, that is not an easy goal to put away from Villalba. And it was such an important goal because it gave you that cushion going to Red Bull Arena where you could just, you know, shut everything down and ride it out and protect yourself and get out of there and lift the trophy. So, yeah, the Tito goal against the Red Bulls late at Mercedes-Benz and that release of emotion, that was massive for this postseason success. Shiva's favorite moment was the Goose chant in the final game. Very cool. All the goals and celebrations were wonderful in all the playoffs, but when Brad made that save, I felt in my heart that we have this game under control as a team. He's a beast. Luckily, he didn't have to do a whole lot in the postseason. I believe, and I need to go back and total it up, I think there were 14 or 15 shots on target. You might have, with the final, you might have gotten up to 18 shots on target in the postseason in 5 games. 3 clean sheets. That's amazing. That doesn't happen very often. So for Brad, what's impressive is that he wasn't tested very much. He didn't have a lot to do in the postseason. But when he had to, in that moment, that save on Abobasi, if that game goes to halftime 1-1, we're talking about a completely different match. It could have went either way. But that save, going in with a 1-0 lead, gave Atlanta, I think, a lot of that belief to finish it off and be able to get it done. So, yeah, that's a massive moment. It's one that will go under the radar a little bit. Alex _KY87. This is more of a bigger Friday flashback. I moved to Savannah from Atlanta this time last year. I decided to go to a bar to watch the Cup, and the amount of Atlanta fans that showed up was impressive. When that whistle blew, that bar just erupted. It reminded me of home and made me proud to be part of this team. It's a big part of it. There were watch parties all over the region. The videos from Sport and Social at the Battery at SunTrust Park was really cool. I mean, it looked like a Super Bowl. It looked like a theater for, you know, a Georgia SEC championship game. It looked giant. So to see that, to see and hear about watch parties in Savannah, in Greenville, I'd love to hear about others. I know Rome has had a ton of watch parties. Really cool to see. And that's kind of, as Mike Conti said many times, that's kind of the next element for this team, growing up into that true regional powerhouse that will be that next frontier where Atlanta United gets even bigger than it is. And I think it's already, based on 73,000 in the building, based on the local TV rating, adding another 250,000 or so to the mix who took this game in. That's not including streaming. That's not including Spanish language. That's not including watch parties. I mean, you could easily be talking about 500,000 people were ride or die with this match. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen for soccer in this country. It's never happened for soccer in this country. Not to that degree. Not for a club team. So very cool. Very, very cool. And there's a lot of room to grow to. That's the thing, is it's nowhere near its ceiling. Tafka said, like a true addict, seeing abbreviated makes me get a bit tense. Well, you know how it goes. We're I thought we'd go about 45 minutes. I'm still talking. So you guys have had a lot to say, and I want to share that. And Tafka does give us the opportunity to take whatever break or vacation. We're not taking a vacation. We're just very weird timing this morning with everybody's schedules. So best playoff moment for Tafka other than winning the trophy, Tito's goal against the Red Bulls. I think that's going to be one that might be front of the DVD if we get one of those. He says, I knew we were through on that goal. Pure joy. Let's see. Talking about managers, Tafka talks about Zinedine Zidane. I don't think Zidane's going to go to the Galaxy. I think Zidane can wait and see what he gets and what he wants. He might just hang out and wait till the French national team opens up. And that might be another cycle. He's not hurting. I don't think he's in any rush. I think that's the cool thing about him. Katie Weaver says, great show yesterday, guys. Listened last night and enjoyed the deep dives into fan culture, Atlanta culture, etc. Totally here for more of that conversation. Favorite moment from the postseason? Tito's goal to ice Red Bull New York. Utter relief. Yeah, that's right there. We will be getting more into the culture side of things. There are podcasts out there that I think cover that in a deeper, more specific way. I mean, what Jay and Kelly do with Unrelegated and going out to watch parties and having these conversations is a really important part of highlighting the culture and cultivating it and helping it grow. So definitely check them out. There is one that I have not had a chance to check out yet for the culture. I believe the Twitter account is FTC ATL UTD. It might be FTC ATL. If I'm wrong, please correct me on Twitter, and we'll blast that out. Started up a little bit later, but they focus on this stuff. It is important. It is very important to highlight it. And I think what's been great about Atlanta is that people have highlighted the elements of the culture without telling you that this is what it should be. I don't care what you like. You have to do this. I think it's more about, hey, check this out. Hey, check this out. Hey, this is really cool too. Hey, you can hang out with these folks. Hey, you can try this out. It's Atlanta. That's just how we are around here. So very cool. Chris Hutchison, his Friday flashback. My being wrong about their not being ready for the playoffs after that insipid loss to Toronto. Nice word, insipid. Yeah, I just had a feeling that would be something that would spur them on, and they wouldn't want to repeat that. So I wasn't as worried about how the playoffs would go after that loss. I thought it would push them forward. You never know until you see, and honestly, it was really early in that New York game at Yankee Stadium. And for me, like if I'm going to go to a moment where I felt comfortable about the postseason, it was the reaction after the goal was called back from Almiron, because there wasn't much of a reaction. And the team immediately just kept pushing forward and kept on keeping on, and nothing really changed. And then they went and got the goal, the volley from Martinez, saved by Johnson. Remedi, almost kills himself on the post, but gets the goal in, and Atlanta takes that lead, and they just hold it off and just completely suffocated NYC in that game to where they couldn't do anything offensively. After that, honestly, and early in that game, I felt pretty good, and I felt like the Toronto loss was going to be something that would spur them on. They wouldn't want to repeat that. John Nason, the fact that Gressel moved inside in the midfield and didn't skip a beat and looked like he belonged as much as he did when playing wide. He looked different. I don't know if I'd say he didn't skip a beat. There were a couple beats I was a little worried about. It felt like they were a little off the rhythm of the team. But Julian in the last couple, and for me, it was his performance at Red Bull Arena and his performance in the final. Man, I mean, just looked like a beast in the middle of the field. And that's not something I thought I would say. I liked what he brought to the team in terms of vision, in terms of creativity, his passing. Didn't really see much of that in those two games. It was grit. It was physicality. It was winning the second ball. It was hard tackling. The parts of his game that I was more concerned about, and that's what was on display in the two games that really mattered. So that's not easy to do. That is very, very difficult to do. And for Julian to be able to sacrifice parts of his game for the good of the team, that shows a lot about the quality of a player and the quality of a teammate that Julian Gressel is, for sure. ATL UTD fan number 1. What's up, Joe? For me in the postseason, it had to be the full stadium tifo versus the Red Bulls and the vibe that set off ahead of the match. I never once felt a threat in the playoffs. We made it look so easy. It was how they started matches and series. You know, let's go back to Yankee Stadium. You came out and intimidated NYC in the first half. Red Bull Arena, or Red Bulls, the first game at Mercedes-Benz. You intimidated them from the whistle with the tifo, and then with the performance in the first half. You controlled that game from the beginning. And in the final, you controlled that game from the beginning. Those were the statements. The way this team came out and just put their stamp on it early. That's big. That's big, and that's difficult for the opposition to handle and balance. Championship trains, Thin Plot on Twitter. Favorite moment of the playoffs? Escobar muscling Royer off the ball in the bends. I roared. Yeah, I loved that one. I believe Mike Conti said he rugby tackled him off. He just stood up like a brick wall, and Royer had nothing to do with being able to hold on to that in the corner. Escobar, for me, was the man of the postseason for Atlanta United. I don't think they win the trophy without his performances. He was that good. And maybe a little unexpected, but he was that good. I was wrong. I thought they needed to play Gressel out wide. I thought you needed to create more chances, and Tata Martino went a completely different direction and doubled down on grit, on physicality, on speed, the things that, outside of the speed, the things that you don't necessarily associate with Atlanta United. And Tata Martino had the right plan and had the right group of guys to do it, and they all bought in, and they all sacrificed to make it happen. Garlic Bread Warlord Nick Alifi shouting out for soccer over there. This week in Serie A, you've got a lot of stuff, and now I can actually watch more of this because I've been so wrapped up in MLS postseason and studying and preparing that I've not been following Serie A as much as I would like, so I'll get a chance this weekend. You have the Turin Derby as Torino face Juve on Saturday, Roma and Genoa, Inter and Udinese. Big games across Serie A this weekend. ESPN Plus is your home. I believe at least one of those will be on ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPN News or ESPNU or whichever ESPN channel that they throw it on. So if you don't have ESPN Plus, you'll be able to watch it there, but you need ESPN Plus. Highly, highly, highly recommended. Highly, highly recommended. Robert Swick. People are saying Atlanta United needed to snatch up Caleb Porter. My thoughts? Nah. Caleb Porter's good, but given who has been rumored, we can garner so much better. Caleb Porter's a good manager in this league, but Caleb Porter would not fit here. He's not a big enough name. I think there is part of that. And Caleb Porter, little bit of a prickly personality. I don't know if that fits what Atlanta United's created. I think the names that have been associated with Atlanta United so far are the correct types of names. And it might be somebody who we haven't talked about a ton. I don't think Caleb Porter's the guy. I don't think he's the one who fits in this situation. So we'll see. I think Columbus is a good fit for him. I think he'll do very well with Columbus. I think he'll take Columbus possibly to another level from where Greg Berhalter had them. We'll have to see how the new ownership invests and what kind of resources they give him. It might look very different with the crew as opposed to that. So stay tuned. But I'm intrigued to see Porter in Columbus and what that can turn into. I think it works really well. Patrick Sullivan, ATL Soccer Passed on Twitter. Aside from the final whistle when we won the whole thing, and despite the fact it didn't end in a goal, my favorite play was Tito's split of the two Red Bulls defenders before hitting the post in the first leg of that series. Oh, man, yeah, that was the one that I think I bounced up to my feet and probably was groaning or making some kind of noise in the background of that call because I thought that was it. When he somehow gets through those two defenders. Tito and his dribbling, it's crazy because he's not the Ronaldinho or Neymar or even Ronaldo in his early days, like throwing these step overs and gliding past people and this and that. It's just Tito puts his head down and he's going to run through you and he's going to somehow keep the ball at the end of it. And if there's two defenders there, he doesn't really care. He's just going to split them. And he's going to then score usually. That time he didn't, but that one was a statement that he was not going to be denied. The look on his face after that was what said it all to me, where I think he looks up at the Halo board and he is just screaming uncontrollably. I just felt that if he had another chance, he was going to put it away. He wanted one more shot at it, and he got it. And that goal was huge. We'll see 78 on Twitter. My favorite moment of the Atlanta United postseason is at the beginning of the Red Bulls' first leg when we all realized that the Red Bulls were not going to press. That was bizarre, and it's still bizarre. And Chris Armas, I don't think he gets a pass for that. I think that's one that he would like to have back. Not pressing for 90 minutes, fine. Totally understand it. But when you saw about 10 minutes in, Bradley Wright Phillips put his hand up and say, nope, we're not going to press this. We're going to sit back. I think Atlanta United had the right strategy, but I think if New York press and make it more difficult for Atlanta United to do what they wanted to do, I don't think that ends up 3-0, and I think you're looking at a second leg that will be more challenging. I still think Atlanta wins. I think the strategy was correct even against the press, but the fact that New York did not press made it easier for Atlanta to have more opportunities to expand and grow into the game. I'm still baffled that they didn't make any changes, especially at halftime. Once you saw where that game was, I felt like you had to get back to your identity a little more, and they just didn't. Maybe one of the biggest surprises of the postseason across the league was the Red Bulls' tactical decisions in the first leg. David Benson, best part of the playoffs, aside from the wins, was the outright nasty defense Atlanta United played with. Beautiful soccer is great, but winning is all that matters. Oh, and all the Jay Riddle videos. They were not nasty or anything like that. They were outstanding. But yeah, the defense. I remember very, very early on in 2017, as this group was coming together, talking about it with the people at Dirty South Soccer. And I think I wrote a piece about it, how Atlanta United had invested more defensively than any expansion team in MLS history and had on paper, one of the best defenses that you could have ever hoped for from day one. And all the talk was Joseph and Miguel, more Miguel at that point, and Tito. Joseph was a little bit of an unknown quantity, but going to get, to start this franchise with Greg Garza, with Michael Parkhurst, with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, who we didn't really know what he would end up being. Tyrone Mears was coming off of a championship. That was your initial starting group. Carlos Carmona, was a name, a player who had been in Serie A for a long time. Jeff Lorenowitz was on the bench day one, but you bring in those 6 guys to start with, and then you're able to make adjustments. You're able to change things around as needed. You get, last season you get performances out of Anton Walks. You go and you get Franco Escobar. This season, Chris McCann slides in as a center back, slides in as a left back. You get performances out of him. Mikey Ambrose steps up when you need it at different points when Garza went down with injuries. You get a couple games out of George Bello that are big performances. You get Miles Robinson's development from year 1 to year 2. Big stuff. I mean, it's not easy to do that. Julian Gressel's emergence, going to 3 in the back, focusing on having that, again, foundation of what Atlanta United could be. You don't have the attack and score more goals than anybody in the league over the 2-year span without having this foundation to build from. So it's something that will always be looked at a little less because goals are always going to get the highlights. But the defense this team showed from day one in 2017 and then found another gear in the postseason to only allow 2 goals. Nothing from the run of play, to have 3 clean sheets. This is an attacking team, but man, they can defend too. Nick Alifi, LGP's crisp tackling versus the Red Bulls in game 1 had me losing my mind. His technique has improved dramatically since year 1. I think what what LGPs went through from arriving here to lifting a trophy, he's just grown up a little bit. I think he's grown into the role that he has here. He's not a captain yet, but he is a leader on this team. And I don't think he knew that he was going to be that early on. I think you looked at who was on this roster, and he was just going to be a player, an important player, but a player. He became a leader, and he took on that responsibility. And I think you saw that as this year especially went on. He made a big mistake in Minnesota and picked up a second yellow in the first half and hurt the team, but they picked him up. And I think, almost in some ways he wanted to repay that throughout the season. And his performances, to me, he's the best center back in this league. He doesn't get that type of credit, but he deserves it. His tackling, his long passing especially, is such a huge part of this team. And his leadership. I really do think that he is the next captain of Atlanta United. And he's a guy that I hope is here for years and years to come. I think he's that important for what this team can be. Tofka TLC referencing the Atlanta United tweet about this is what it means with our friend Vera and Tito, both in tears. Tofka says, that shot of Tito says a lot. Makes me tear up. He was the first major player to sign on to Atlanta United before we had a coach or stadium or training center or a team. It was a huge leap of faith and a major career risk for him. What a payoff and what a champion. I remember meeting Tito when he was presented to the media here that day. And there was a good number of media there, which was very cool. But had a chance to talk to him with my friend Ricardo, who was translating at that time. This was pre-Justin. This was these were the early days. I don't think Justin was even with the team yet at that point. I'm pretty sure he wasn't. Tito was one, you could tell, overwhelmed by everything. You could tell he was very tired because it was a long flight as well, and he was very shy. And that all kind of struck me. I knew his background. I knew his history. I knew, what he had come from. Coming to San Lorenzo, growing up in the very rough neighborhood across the street from San Lorenzo Stadium, and getting through all of that to lift the Copa Libertadores championship trophy, and knowing what that meant to him, and in making that decision to come here. He had fallen out of favor at San Lorenzo, his boyhood club. He was still a young man at this point, but to come to a project that was unknown at that point. You knew it was going to be well supported. You knew you'd have resources. I'm sure by that stage, conversations were already well underway about Tata Martino, and Tito probably knew when he signed that was a very strong possibility and played into it. But to take that risk and to be that guy. And then last year, he was the guy when Joseph Martinez was injured. He kept this team afloat for a long time. One of my favorite matches that I will always reference, and we weren't even there, was the game against Toronto on the road at BMO Field. That's where you knew in 2017 that this was a real legit team. This was not your typical expansion team. To go up there against the defending Eastern Conference champs and MLS Cup finalists and get a 2-2 result with Joseph Martinez injured and the 2 goals from Tito. Whew. That was where you knew he was a force to be reckoned with, and you knew this team was a force to be reckoned with. He's put this team on his back many, many times, and I think he will continue to do so. Tito's absolutely Atlanta. I think his celebrations and banging the drum and all that showed how much it meant to him. It was very cool to see. Jimmy Vance, ATL Soccer 929. Favorite playoff moment, not including the final, was when Tito scored against the Red Bulls. The noise generated after that was incredible. It hit a level that I didn't think was possible, and then it hit a level that was surpassed by the final, which was crazy. Going back and listening to that, oh my God. You guys were just stupid loud in that. Championship trains, I see your question. We'll probably finish with that. Daniel Graham requests Kelly O'Hara, Emily Sonnet in studio for live interviews for the first women's soccer show. Daniel, I'm glad we're able to fool you enough to think that we have a studio. We don't. One day, maybe we will. I don't think I'm going to be able to get Kelly O'Hara and Emily Sonnet to my apartment or John's house or Jarrett's house to do an in studio. Maybe we can borrow the studios at 92.9 for something like that. But yeah, those are the types of things we want to do. We want to grow it. We want to have a studio first off. One day, maybe we will. But yeah, we want to have a women's soccer show that is what it should be and gives that side of the sport the shine that it deserves. I really do hope we have a team in Atlanta down the road when the time is right and when the right people can do it. I want it to be a big deal. I think a lot of girls have been inspired by what's happened here with Atlanta United, and they need a place to play and strive to play for as well. You know, what Mexico is doing with the women's game and watching, you know, their Super Estadio and their highlight shows and seeing how much attention they give to the women's matches and just seeing the women's teams for Club America and Monterrey and Chivas and how they're treated. That is so cool. And I want to see that happen. Don Garber said at the State of the League address that it's something that MLS needs to figure out, you know, what that looks like and how they support the women's game. I hope they do. And I hope they figure out what the right way to do it is. It might not be the same as what's happened in Liga MX. It might not be the same as what happens in other countries, but I think MLS supporting it is very important. And we've seen the success that Portland and Salt Lake have had with it. And I think the potential that Houston and Orlando have to take it to another level. Hopefully, we get to see that here at some point. So, yeah, women's soccer in 2019 is going to be a big thing for us with SDH. Joey Logan, what a moment for the team talking about Tito's goal. Dagger in the hearts of the Red Bulls. Going down 2 going back home wouldn't have been difficult. 3-0 so daunting. And to see the emotion on Tito's face after just hitting the post earlier in the year he had with injuries. Yeah, it was big. Kefzi, lots of favorite moments in the playoffs, but the revival-sized tent party in the Gulch with epic atmosphere was wonderful. Yeah, I completely agree. Those pictures and those videos, those are the moments that, I mean, I can tell you, you know, how much I love what I do and would never give it up for anything. Those are the moments that it's like, man, I wish I could be in 2 places at one time. And I wish I could have been in the Gulch to experience that firsthand. So you guys who captured that on video and pictures, thank you. Because that's something that, you know, we in the booth don't get to see or feel. And we have to do that through you guys. And that means a ton. So I love seeing that stuff. Absolutely love seeing that stuff. Let me see if there's anything else before we get there. Shiva has a good question. When are we going to have a song for our club that the whole stadium can sing? Timbers do, I think they do We're Not Going to Take It. They also, I believe, Portland, a couple others had adopted it because quite a few clubs around the world do it. Just can't get enough. Depeche Mode, early Depeche Mode, that's one that gets around a lot. I don't know. I don't know what that song is going to be. If it's not We Ready, I don't know. I mean, I think We Ready might be that song, Shiva. It's really cool when everybody is doing that with the cell phone lights. And I think that'll be even bigger now that just more people know it and it continues to grow. It's easier for a 20,000 seat venue to have a song like that than a 70,000 seat venue. It just is. It's more difficult to see that when the full stadium is full with Mercedes-Benz because you're talking about something that everybody has to understand and know and sing. And I think these moments and these videos have a big part of doing that and have a big part of telling that story and doing it. Man, y'all have more Friday flashbacks, Flashback Fridays. Scott Moore, my big thought has been that local connection that you guys bring. Bought season tickets this year, fully committed, but then to interact with you guys on Twitter, then hear my name on post-game broadcasts as you guys read and I'm trying to link. Answer my questions was really cool. It really put my fandom beyond anything I could have imagined when I first bought my season tickets. I already can't wait for 2019. Vamos, ATL UTD. Yeah, that's something that we've really wanted to do with our radio, with Soccer Down Here. we've wanted to make it a conversation and interact with you guys as much as possible. It's a big part of it. It's an important part of it. And it's something that I hope, helps it grow. I mean, I hope that, it gives a special feeling to people. I know, when 20 years ago, when I was a fan, if there had been these types of things for the Atlanta Ruckus, I wish that, my tweet or my, at that time, email on an email list would have been shared. It's crazy, but it's an opportunity that we have. And I hope that we do that in the best way, and we'll always try to do that. It's always going to be part of what we do. It's not about us. It's about everybody. That's the important thing here. Dan Murphy tweets, the best moment for me was Miggy's free kick goal against NYC. Good shout for that one. We hadn't heard that one yet. There was no chance VAR could take it away, so the joy was instantaneous and undeniable, and that we were not going to repeat mistakes of the past, cementing we'd see no more curse. Yeah, I wasn't as concerned going into the Red Bull series because of how well they played against NYC, and it was different level of competition and different fears, but I had much more confidence because of how they handled NYC. If it had been a closer series, if it had been more of a battle, probably would have felt differently going into Red Bulls. Didn't have that. And that free kick goal was a big part of it. That did make it incredibly comfortable at that point because that made it 3-0 with an away goal. So you were in great spot at that stage. And it was unexpected too because, I remember talking with Mike in that call. It's like, okay, what are they going to do here? Because it's Joseph and Miguel over it. That's not necessarily typical, but Atlanta United hasn't really had many of those chances when Kevin Kratz hasn't been on the field. When he's on the field, Kevin Kratz is taking that free kick. Otherwise, it's a little more of a crapshoot. And Miguel steps up and scores his first goal from a direct free kick for Atlanta United. And from what he said, his first as a professional. So that's a big moment to hit your best free kick of your life. Five Stripe Daily on Twitter shares minor moment for a Friday flashback. After Red Bulls scored, but before VAR reverses it, Joseph bringing the ball back to the spot and the whole stadium starts to cheer and lift the team was my all 70,000 are ride or die for this team moment. Then VAR reverses the goal and the roof is lifted off. Yeah, that's a good one. That's one that is a little different and I hadn't really thought of. That's one that I'd love to go back and see because at the time, I didn't really know what was being reviewed. And this is back to VAR communication having to improve. I don't know how many people really knew what was being reviewed. I'm sure people in the stadium didn't. We were trying to figure it out on the radio call. And I don't think we completely got it until right as it was being overturned or even after that when we started to see definitely that Muil was offside and obstructing Gazan. So yeah, that was one that it's kind of like, even as it's happening, you're thinking, okay, Red Bulls have scored. This is going to be a battle. The crowd wasn't scared. That's a good call, Five Stripe Daily. That's a really good call. Swick says, favorite playoff moment. The Swickster on Twitter. When I looked around during one of the We Are the A chants and realized every section from 131 to 107 was participating in the whole chant. The volume of the chant was so amazing. I did notice that the volume of the traditional chants was louder. More and more people were getting it. It's just part of that process. When you open the full stadium, you have people who are there for the first time, and they don't know the traditions, and they don't know those chants yet. They're learning them. They're getting them, but they're not completely there from day one. It will continue to grow, and that's a hallmark. I mean, that is one of those that will always be done and always have a place at Atlanta United matches. So it's really cool to see more and more people get it. Jill Robbins, rocking_Rob on Twitter. So many moments, especially the Tito goal. However, just need to shout out the season ticket holder and Soccer Down Here listener from Huntsville that sat next to us in 223 row 1 at MLS Cup. Diehard fan that made the trip. Hope you made that trip home safely. Was that Lewis Martin? That might have been Lewis Martin who was sitting over there. Jill, we'll have to see who was sitting 223 row 1 at MLS Cup, who listens to the show and is from Huntsville, Alabama. Would love to find out and connect you with Jill, because you both are awesome. Michael Valverde, Content Mind on Twitter. The final whistle at Yankee Stadium was the moment I knew destiny was calling for Atlanta United for MLS champions. It definitely felt different because, I will always remember on the bus riding over there. It's myself, it's Mike, it's the digital and communications teams for Atlanta United. We were on the minibus talking about it, and we talked about what that signature win was for Atlanta United going into that. And we all kind of had different answers. There were different ones that popped up. But after that game, it was obvious that was the signature win. And then that was replaced as the postseason went on. But we didn't really know what the signature win was until that one. And that changed everything. That made things much more confident in the postseason. That gave you that signature moment. It gave you, I think it gave the players, it gave the team, it gave the fans that belief that, yeah, this can actually happen right here. 100%. That can be the difference in this one. Sherbs says, I was against the no defense narrative last year because it was so plainly not true. But I realized it was started by the team itself. Every Eels interview was 4 to 3 games. They wanted to make sure people knew it'd be exciting. Definitely, and that was a huge part of it. I was a little disappointed in the soccer media, not locally, but nationally, not giving this defense its due. Because that's one that, I mean, come on. If you're watching this defense play last season and this season, you see that it's a lot better than they get credit for. And that needs to be talked about more. Go ATL with a question. Hey, Soccer Down here. What do you think about Eduardo Berizzo as a way off the radar candidate for Atlanta United coach? From the Bielsa tree, good success in Chile and Celta, poor showing at Bilbao got him sacked this year. He's one that has been on my radar. That Bielsa tree is important, and he's one that there were some health issues, and I believe those are all good now. So I've had some conversations with different people about, I wonder if he's going to be a candidate. A little off the radar. I wouldn't go way off the radar, but a little off the radar. He just hasn't been talked about much yet. So I wonder if he is on that list. I would assume that he is, and I would assume that at least, feelers have been put out to see if he'd be interested and how that might fit. He's absolutely a candidate in my book, and I think he'd be a good fit if it came down to it. Shiva has one more. Mike Conti's call on the Remedi goal. VAR that one, you won't be able to. Yeah, that was a good one. I think I was laughing. Now Garlic Bird. Warlord is trying to figure out where he sits versus where Jill and the Huntsville listener sat for MLS Cup. He sits 233 row 1. Jill was 223 row 1. So you guys are close. You guys can high-five each other next season for sure. All right, let me get back to the comment/question. And man, I got to scroll back a long way because y'all are crazy on a Friday that was supposed to last an hour and it has went almost the normal time show. Championship trains, and this is a good philosophical question to end on. Did Philip Anschutz possibly limit soccer's growth in the U.S. with soccer-specific stadiums? If so, is getting twerked on a valid end to MLS 2.0? I'm going to stay away from the second part, Trains. Sorry. The first part, I don't think it did. I think it was a decision made at a very specific time. And honestly, Lamar Hunt was the one who started the soccer-specific stadiums. Lamar Hunt with Columbus really just made that happen on his own. He tried and went through a number of different scenarios of where that stadium would be built. Finally, he did it himself and got the land and got it done, and it opened in 1999. And it was what was needed at that time because the Crew were playing at Ohio Stadium, which they were going to have to leave anyway because it was about to be renovated. But they were playing on a 60-yard wide field. You think Yankee Stadium's small. Go look at those early Columbus games with the track around it at the old Horseshoe at Ohio State. Oh, it was awful. They were in a huge venue and drawing 20,000, if that, and it looked awful. So building a 20,000 seat stadium made sense at that time. I wish maybe the soccer-specific stadiums had went more of the direction of the Home Depot Center, which is now going to be called the Dignity Health Sports Park, which was last called the StubHub Center. Welcome to the world of sponsored stadiums. The Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, where the LA Galaxy play. That one is a soccer-specific stadium, a smaller stadium that feels bigger. The design is great. It works really well. It's about 27,000 with temporary seating, with standing room. I think now it might actually be even bigger with the additions for the Chargers. I think you can get 30,000 plus in there easily. So I wish that had been the baseline instead of the 18 to 20 that kind of became the baseline. And I wish there'd been a little more variety in the look of the stadiums. You know, when you start comparing Frisco and Philly and Chicago, all kind of feel the same in some ways. Houston looks and feels a little different, maybe just because of the orange. Philly has a little bit different feel because of the river end and the bridge and that look. It looks very cool. But the inside of the stadiums all kind of feel the same. And I do agree that they are a limiter to how those teams are perceived. I really do. But I understand why they came about, because at the time, that was where it was. I think what it shows is the growth of soccer in the U.S., and especially after Atlanta United's launch. That's not the limit for soccer's following here anymore. It's a different time now. What's been frustrating, not so much those stadiums being built and their size, it's the ones that have been built since that are smaller, like Bank of California. Should be a bigger stadium. It's too small for that time when it was built. Orlando, I mean, they had to expand it to 25, and you could have went bigger, because look at what that club was drawing at Camping World Stadium before they moved into the smaller venue. Now, they put a bad product on the field, and fans have went away for that and for other reasons. The front office hasn't done a good job of cultivating that fan base, but that's one that you kind of wonder if you'd kept playing at Camping World, or if you'd been able to make Orlando City Stadium 40,000. What would it be? How would that fan base be? These are the types of things that are issues. So Cincinnati, it's a question. Is 25 enough after coming from Nippert? We'll see what the crowds look like at Nippert, but I kind of feel like it is. Nashville's going to start at 30. That's good. I think 30 is kind of that magic number now. But it's also why I was so frustrated with people flying off the handle about Detroit not building a small stadium and wanting to retrofit Ford Field. We've seen games at Ford Field. It can work. But trying to figure out the way that you replicate what Mercedes-Benz has done with a smaller soccer configuration and a bigger one that is available. It made complete sense to me. It looked like the Detroit ownership that's trying to bring expansion was paying attention to what was happening and saying, you know what, we can go bigger. We don't have to limit ourselves. So the roundabout way to answer Championship Train's Chewy Thin Plot's question about did Philip Anschutz possibly limit soccer growth in the U.S. with soccer-specific stadiums? No, because it was the right decision at that time. Now, ownership groups, stadiums, cities have to understand that soccer can be bigger. And this conversation and this thought process has to look forward to 2026 when it can be much, much bigger. And if the solution, which I think is a completely valid one, is for teams to look at what San Jose's done, where they play a game or two, sometimes more, a year at a bigger venue nearby, do it. If that's your in-between, do it. Red Bulls, play at MetLife. Do something special over there at MetLife. Play NYC at MetLife and pack the place with Red Bulls fans if you can do that. Don't be afraid of trying to do that. Philadelphia, play at Lincoln Financial for a game. They've done it before. They did it as the stadium was being built out in Chester. Do it again once a year. Have a rivalry game there. You know, these things are important to show that it can be bigger. If those are your special events, if that's how you replicate Atlanta United opening the whole stadium, if that's how you replicate what Seattle did with that, do it. if that's your in-between step to being in bigger stadiums, that's a possibility that we have in this country, and we should take advantage of it. Book it, sell it, make it a big deal. If you put all the bells and whistles into it to make it a big deal and make sure you fill it. I just want to see teams not be afraid to try that and not be afraid to strive for that. So I disagree. I say no to your answer. No to your question, Championship Trains. I don't think Philip Anschutz limited soccer's growth in the U.S. I think it grew faster than we expected, and mostly because of what's happened here in Atlanta. And now adjustments have to be made to that process. And I think MLS 2.0 ended with the Seattle-Toronto final in 2016 before Atlanta showed up on the scene. I think that was the end of 2.0. Atlanta is MLS 3.0. And I'm curious to see what 4.0 is, because I don't know yet. Not sure. We'll find out. We'll know when it happens. Don't know what it's going to be, but Atlanta was 3.0. I put that 2016 final as the absolute end of 2.0, with the two teams that I think were along with Portland specifically and a little bit of Vancouver, Toronto and Seattle took the league to another level, took it from 1.0 to 2.0. Atlanta's taken it to 3.0. What's going to take it to 4.0? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All right, this was going to be an abbreviated show. It's not. It's just going to be a very slightly shorter show than normal, and that's it. Yes, Tafka, I'm a beast or crazy. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Y'all are making this possible because of all the great Twitter interaction. I didn't need Jarrett or John this morning because y'all filled the gap in a big way. And thanks to Jay Riddle for chiming in and calling in as well. Next week, we'll be back to a pretty normal schedule. 9 o'clock Monday morning. We'll also have soccer over there in the dinner time on Monday. We'll get caught up on all the craziness from Champions League and everything that's happening in soccer over there with our buddy Nick Alifi. So download the SDH app, Android and iOS available. Thanks to everybody who has listened. It's been, I'm just about positive, our biggest week for live listens, even with crazy schedules, even with no show on Monday, even with an air quotes abbreviated edition today. Thank you so much. There's no way we could do any of this stuff without you guys. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk soccer with you every day. We really appreciate it. With that, talk to you guys Monday. Have a great weekend. Mucha plata, y'all.